Everyone to our joint school board assembly work session. This is a special work session which the school district requested so that we could have an opportunity to have a conversation regarding the mayor's proposed budget and the impact to ASD. I'd like to do a roll call before we do and we're going to do that by Katie. Are you ready? Okay. Because I can't see who's online. So Katie will do a roll call.
President Bellamy.
Present.
Member Holloman. Member Donnelly.
Here. Here.
Member Higgins.
Here.
Member Lessons.
Here. She's here.
Member Jacobs.
Present.
And Member Wilson.
Present.
Oh, and our student representative of the school board, Ellie Shaw. Thank you. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you.
And Claire will be, from the municipality, will be doing the roll call for the assembly.
Thank you.
Chair LaFrance, Vice Chair Constant, Ms. Allard, Mr. Dunbar,
Here.
Ms. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Perez Verdia,
Here.
Mr. Peterson, Mr. Rivera,
Present. Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson,
Here.
Ms. Zalatel.
Here. Okay, thank you. With that, we will please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude the Dena'ina people, past and present, who have lived on these lands since long before Anchorage was here. May we all be good stewards of these lands. Shannon. That brings us to item B on our agenda, which is to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any opposition to approving the agenda as presented? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. So that brings us to item C, which is our discussion of the proposed municipal budget. And I'd just like to make a few opening comments regarding why we're here, why I believe we're here today. There are 3 items in the mayor's proposed budget that will have great impact on the Anchorage School District. Those items include the cost shift for the SROs. It includes the cost shift for the pool maintenance and personnel. And it includes $1 million cut to the pre-K budget. What we would like to, or at least for the pre-K allowance from the alcohol tax. So what we'd like to do today is, of course, have a conversation on the issues, but we also want to share with you the value of the SROs to the ASD, as well as the impact of if we're not able to fund that, what would that impact be if the mayor does not, or if the municipal budget remains as it is? So I'd like to have this be as informal as possible, but I'd also like to just share that we were a lot blindsided by the mayor's proposed cuts. In future administrations, I think we had at least some conversation, and so we are still hoping to have conversations with the mayor, but we have not had those conversations. We've not been able to have those conversations. So it did come as quite a surprise that these three items would be cost shifted and or reduced. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bishop and have her just say a few words before we continue our conversation.
Thank you. And I want to thank the Assembly again for adding one more meeting on your list. And so we know that you have a few coming up through the weekend before you really start deliberating on your city budget as well. So just thank you so much for making the time this morning. And we really did want to meet to share and to dialogue with you about not only the issues at hand, but the impact. And sometimes being able to see that impact and talk with the people who we use the term the Gemba, which is kind of a Japanese term meaning the kind of the front line or where the value is added. For the school district, the value is not added in this building. The value is added in our schools. And so with that, there are great leaders behind me that lead their schools, elementary, middle, and high schools that are going to support with information at the ground level to any questions. Again, we're going to really discuss those three things. What is the impact of this budget? And then share after the impact of those things that are impacted, what are the value of those to your community for which you lead, to the board's community, to our community, the municipality of Anchorage. And then finally, looking at that impact and that of the issues here, what that would look like and offer the question and answer to the people who can really answer those questions directly. We also have our student advisory board to the school board, as well as president of the student advisory board here joining us. In addition, question and answer. Really, that really is the biggest part of this. So without further ado, I'm going to just turn it over to Jim Anderson. He's the Chief Financial Officer. Should we just jump into it, or did you want to?
No, we can just jump into it. What I'd like to do, though, is if everyone could hold their questions, like write them down. Let's get through our presentation, and then we'll come back and do questions and have comments from individuals who'd like to speak. So if we could do that, that would be great.
Sure. So as we're discussing budgets, budget is the revenue and finances and expenditures in a given year. And we want to share with you the big why of the issue. And Jim is just going to share a 30,000-foot view so that we have kind of this construct to think around about what's happening at the state level with education so that we can balance that against the city level.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. So if you look at this chart from left to right, you will see pencils. Normally they're bar graphs, but you'll see pencils instead of a bar. And at the very top of the pencil, you'll see, starting on the left, $5,680. That number is equivalent to the base student allocation in the state's foundation formula, which is multiplied by the adjusted average daily membership. It's a 6-step formula to determine our funding. And so in essence, that base student allocation is multiplied times, for Anchorage, if our average daily membership is roughly 43,000 for this year in the OASIS count. When you go through the formula, the adjusted average daily membership is roughly 70,000, a little bit higher. And then that's the number that gets multiplied by the base student allocation. You can see that since 2011, there have been a couple upticks where the state increased the base student allocation, once in 2015, 16, and again in 2017. So we've had flat funding from the state in terms of the formula, the statutory formula, since 2017. Above that base student allocation number, you'll see that multiple times throughout the last 10 years, the legislature knew that they were underfunding education. So they would add some one-time money that they would allocate for 1 year to try to make up for some of that inflationary cost that was creating deficits across the state, but they really didn't significantly change the base student allocation. So if you look again at the far left, $5,680. If you use the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics CPI calculator, that would be equivalent to $6,938 in today's money. So the base student allocation from 2011, if we were to be able to be funded at the same amount we were funded in 2011, it would not be $56.80, it would be $69.38 and 52 cents. So roughly we have lost $1,258 in purchasing power per BSA since 2011. If you look at that in terms of total aggregate dollars on what we're allowed to spend on ASD, that difference in BSA from 2011 to now is about the difference of $70 million a year in our ability to provide the same resources, supports, and environment that we could provide in 2011. If you go to 2017, which is the last time the BSA was adjusted, and it's remained flat, that difference from 59.30 up until last month is $6,649 and some change, or about $719.45 difference on BSA that we're short. That equivalent in the last 5 years is roughly about a $40 million difference in what we can provide in our total budget compared to 2017. So when you hear about education is fully funded, that comes out almost every year when the governor ultimately signs all the allocations and the funding bills. When they say fully funded, what they really mean is fully funded in accordance with the BSA. The state has not in the last 10 years, and certainly has not in the last 5 years, kept up with the cost of inflation. And again, that difference in the last 5 years is about $40 million in today's money for purchasing power. And if you go back 10 years, it's closer to $70 million in being able to provide the exact same everything that we could in the past.
Thank you, Jim. And we went through the formula pretty quickly. The multipliers in the state formula are cost area differential, school size factor, but the biggest one that adds to the ADM or the adjusted ADM are programs for which the state has valued statutorily or is a federal requirement, such as English language learners, special education, career technical education, and gifted education. And so that is what changes the average daily membership over time, just to give you a picture of that. Here.
Thank you, President Bellamy. I just want to know for the record, we've been joined by Member Weddleton. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if you have any business questions on the revenue and expenditures, please jot those down. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kirsten Johnson and her team to discuss really what is the SRO program. That's the largest dollar amount, the largest ticket number that had a reduction. And she and her team are going to share about the SRO program and its value to ASD and our community.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bishop. Through the president to Assembly and school board members, thank you for being here today. I appreciate the opportunity to just share, like Dr. Bishop mentioned, the value and the impact of the SRO program to our schools. I'm Kirsten Johnson. I'm the Senior Director of Secondary Education. So I supervise all of our secondary schools in the Anchorage School District. And work directly with principals and their schools. And so before we get into the details, I think it's just really important to have a really short overview and history lesson of our SRO program. There's been kind of an evolution of the program over the partnership and the years that we've worked with APD through that partnership. So for those that are not super familiar, we have a 20-year, almost 20-year relationship with the Anchorage Police Department and the Anchorage School District, where we've had school resource officers in our buildings. We really have designed a program that's very different than just being totally reactive. Our school resource officers really focus on building trust with youth, mentoring them. They really work on community policing and breaking down barriers between what maybe our past experiences with APD and having positive relationships. And ultimately, we really see them as a part of our staff when they're working with us day to day. And at the end, their goal is to provide a safe school environment, because we all know that community issues do come into our schools as well, unfortunately. So looking at our teams of SROs, we have 17 officers in the school resource program. That includes 1 lieutenant and 1 sergeant. They're assigned at our high schools, our large 8 high schools in the district, and 1 at Clark Middle School. But they service all 90 of our schools in the school district and work very day in and day out to really get to know kids and their families and our staff.
Dr. Johnson, can I just have a moment, please? We had some people in the boardroom that do not have their masks on. Just a reminder that we can give you one if you don't have one, but in our boardroom, we do wear masks, and they should cover your mouth and your nose. Thank you.
All right.
You may continue.
Thank you. So they have our SRO program, just in the amount of schools they serve and across our city, really have a far reach and do a lot of good work. So I just wanted to also focus, our teams of SROs and buildings really focus not just on being very reactive to crimes within our schools or within the community, but they have a youth outreach focus and a mental health focus as well, and have some training to go along with that. So I'd like to talk about their training on the next slide. So when SROs come into the program, they are already fully trained police officers, but they undergo additional training so that they can be a part of the school resource program. They attend training through the National Association of School Resource Officers. They learn extensively about school environments and school situations. Like I had mentioned before, they have a mental health focus. They also really focus on cultural diversity. They have additional first aid training that a lot of our students may need help with at school. And then they really work on active threat situations. And in addition, they are really rigorous through the Anchorage Police Department on who they select for a school resource officer position. And really the bottom line is there's a big difference between a patrol officer and a school resource officer and how they work with kids. So I'd like to just take a moment to turn it over to Brendan Wilson. He's the principal at Baggage Middle School. He's here behind me to just talk about that difference that he sees, because he's had experience with both patrol officers working with students and our school resource officers. So I'll turn it over to Brendan.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. In addition to my role at Baggage Middle School, I'm also on the state board for the Alaska Association of Secondary Principals. I'm the liaison with our national organization, and a couple of years ago, our national organization, at the request of several congressional offices who are interested in this issue, crafted a position statement. And that position statement is in support of SROs. Our state association agrees, as long as certain conditions are met. And those conditions are: officers need to be a frequent presence in schools so that they can build relationships with our kids and get that mentor relationship that you just heard about. They should be doing some education with our kids to be proactive. There should be a strict boundary between legal matters and school discipline matters. And Finally, they need to get that specialized training that you just heard about. And it sounds like I just repeated what Dr. Johnson said. We should all feel like that's a really good thing. I'm really proud that for the past 20 years, our school resource officer program has been implemented in a way that's consistent with those national standards. I'd like to highlight a couple key differences between school resource officers and patrol officers. And they're really those things that we just talked about. The first one is building rapport with kids. The only way to build rapport with kids is to actually be in a building talking with kids. Our SROs talk with them in the hallways, they talk with them at lunch, and that's how they build those relationships that can be leveraged later when there's a crisis. The second way is the training that Dr. Johnson just talked about. It's not at all unusual when I greet an officer at the door to say something like, "Hey, thank you for responding. I need you to know that the kid we're going to work with today has autism." Or maybe the kid we need to work with today is a refugee who's brand new to the country and they're going to need an interpreter, and this is going to take a long time. Maybe the kid has experienced some trauma and this is a child whose parents are afraid of working with the police. There are a wide range of learning needs that our kids have. And while we have some excellent patrol officers there, and I have had some good experiences with them, it's a rare patrol officer who can meet the wide dynamic range of needs that our kids have, the way that I just described. I'm 100% confident that our SROs, when they walk through the door, are able to navigate all the various situations we have. They're able to understand that each building has its own unique culture. And I know that when they talk with their kids, they're going to do so in a way that protects their dignity. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brendan. So I'd like to just talk a little bit more about that approach. I think that one of the things that people don't realize about our SROs is that a majority of their job focuses on community policing. In community policing alone, in the last year, our SROs have served over 3,000 calls within our schools or with juveniles in our community that they know from school. And they're often utilized that way by patrol because they know families and kids. And then one of the things that I think is really key is that I truly believe our school resource officers prevent a pipeline to prison, which is what we are often worried about when we're talking about police officers in buildings. And so I'd like to just talk about that really specifically. We have two of our large high school principals here, Ron Brown from East High School and Sven Gustafson from West High School. And I'd like them to just take a minute to elaborate on that pipeline to prison prevention.
Just before you start, thank you. Member Holloman has joined us virtually. Go on, Mr. Pratt.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for having me here. Just want to take a few minutes to just share some of my experiences that I've had at East High School with the SROs. I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with community partners. Having them in the school brings a sense of comfort to my parents and to my staff because they know that we are working in a partnership. And so they're coming to rely more and more upon the school resource officers, Anchorage Police Department, as being a partner. And we talk about having partnerships all the time. One of the things that I really pride myself on is just making sure that all students and all staff in our building are treated with dignity and respect. And so sometimes that's really hard to do if we're in a crisis situation and a regular street police doesn't know the culture of the building at East. As one of the largest high schools in the state, very diverse, very, there's a lot of different factions that go into East High School. And it's really critical that I have someone that I can work with, that I can trust is not going to overstep their bounds when they walk into the school and create an even bigger situation. I've had the misfortune, unfortunately, this school year of having a large chaotic situation at my school. And, immediately when that happened, I looked over at my SRO. I was so thankful to have him there because he was able to direct some of that negative energy, kind of tamp it down a little bit. APD did show up to my school, regular street officers pulled in. They had no idea what was going on. Their first response was, let's just react. Let's just get everybody down. It just turned the situation even more chaotic. By having that SRO there, he and I were able to walk students to their class, put everybody at ease. Students were happy and excited to see a familiar face. Sometimes it's really tough, as one of my colleagues was saying earlier, When you don't have that person who knows the kids, that don't know the program, they don't have the history built up. So it's really, really important to have that person that has been around the school on a consistent basis, sometimes 2 and 3 generations, because our SROs also work on school events, football games, basketball games, and those go a long way in meeting with our parents and making sure they understand what the needs of the community are. So I am a really, really big firm believer in having those SROs in school. We also try to make sure that we use restorative justice practices in our schools. And then that's one of the things that I believe really stops the pipeline to prison, situation, because what those SROs do is they really are the people who provide guidance to these students that seem to be troubled. They give them a way out. They give them options. They have another adult that they can talk about rather than just reacting to the situation. Most of the time we get street cops into the building, their first response would be to just attack the delinquent behaviors, just attack without asking the question. So it's really, really important and really critical that I have someone in my building that I can trust, someone that I know is going to always treat the students with dignity and respect, and someone that I can count upon to be a partner with in our community. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Sven Gustafson. I'm the principal at West High School, and I'd like to echo almost everything Ron says because I've also had a chaotic event just recently, and I think I'm going to be talking about that a little later. But the one thing that I've always been really supportive of the SROs is the fact that when we're dealing with students in our offices, and we're dealing sometimes with some crazy stuff, because what's happening in the community usually comes into our schools. Our SROs know the kids, know the parents, know the neighborhoods. They know what's going on. I've had one kid act out quite aggressively earlier this year, and the SRO knew that the dad had been put into jail and the mom had some mental illness, and this junior in high school is taking care of his 3 younger siblings. And so the SRO was able to help us talk this kiddo down, not do any kind of arrest. I have had in the past where patrol officers have come in with gloves and told me to kind of get out of the way and arrest kids. And one of the things I always want I never want my kids to be arrested. And if we can find any way to not arrest them and work with them, that's the number one goal for us at West High School. And I'll talk more about the other thing a little later.
All right, thank you. So I wanted you heard a little bit about the types of community policing kind of alluded to by our principals, but school-sponsored events, welfare checks and home visits are a big part of what they do as well. They often help with OCS, Office of Children's Services, child abuse cases or investigations, and then they also help with a lot of custody disputes that take place between parents at our schools. So Chris Opitz is here from Taku Elementary. He's had some experience with this in his SROs, and I wanted to just give him an opportunity to talk about how that works on the school level.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and thanks for the opportunity to speak on this super important topic. I'm currently at Taku Elementary. I was formerly the principal at Huffman. I've had numerous experiences with our SROs at the elementary school, and I just want you to think of your own little kids, that are 6, 7, 8 years old, and the perception that they have of law enforcement and our police and our SROs, and, building trusting relationships and looking to our SROs as trusted adults in these very, very sensitive situations can't be overstated. I've had experiences where we've had very sensitive issues with OCS, abuse, both physical and sexual, things that are just some of the most scary things that you could possibly imagine for a little child. And having an SRO that has relationships with kids and families, that's focused on the overall big picture and well-being of our students to help them stay in school and feel safe is just an incredible asset that I can't overstate. And even on the front of having some significant behaviors, I've had SROs go with me on home visits to work with families about strategies to support kids so that they can stay in school. Attendance is a massive issue for our kids, especially kids and families that might be struggling. And, having people that we can develop relationships and trust with to provide strategies as well as checkups, actually going to the home and checking up on kids. Not because we're going to create a situation that's antagonistic, but to demonstrate that we care, because as parents, they're the most important educators in a child's life. And when SROs talk with parents and help them understand that and see that picture, it helps our kids stay in school. They've also helped in crisis situations with ALICE drills. Think of active shooter drills in our schools, and these little kids, it's a drill, and having those officers, SROs there to demonstrate that they are safe, they are trusted, and over, developing a pattern of trust and relationships, it serves a long-term purpose. So I'm very excited to speak on behalf of that. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. And then one of the things I just wanted to highlight as well is often if detectives or patrol officers are involved in a criminal case that involves children within our system, our patrol and detectives that are investigating those situations often call on our SROs because they do have that relationship with kids and they know those families. So that's another benefit to the community policing part of our SRO program. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to just talk about the goals and objectives. We've heard a lot about relationships, but there really are some other functions that we really want to talk about. One of the big things that SROs do in our schools is prevention with our kids and getting into classrooms or educational settings where they're working alongside our educators. And Marcus Wilson is here from Wendler Middle. He's the principal at Wendler Middle School, and he has a really great relationship with his SROs that where they do safety talks. So I'd like him to just really highlight that at school.
No, thank you, Kirsten, for the opportunity to come talk today about the value of our SROs in our school. And I'd like to talk today about on the prevention and educational lens of our SROs. One thing I would like to start out with is, I think something that our SROs have a really unique position in our school district is by their regional placement. These are some of the only individuals in our schools that get to follow our students from the time they enter for preschool or kindergarten and follow them to graduation to high school. So that's a great value and a great opportunity that they get to build relationships with these students, and oftentimes building relationships with some of our families, like Mr. Brown talked about, and some of our students that don't have the most positive relationship with law enforcement and things like that. Something that we do at Wendler is we do educational safety talks with our SROs. Our SROs come in and they talk about such things as bullying. They talk about the harmful effects of drugs and vaping, and we do this several times a year. One thing that was really a positive experience, that's something that the adults didn't know about, is our SROs got to come into the school and talk to our students. And I'm sure a lot of you guys heard about the TikTok challenge that was going on about tearing up bathrooms and things like that. Our SROs came in and talked to our students and staff about that even before that began in our schools. So they were really able to come in and prevent, I feel, a lot of damage being done to our students by coming in and doing some of those safety talks. And I think that's what's good about them in their roles, is they really see some of those things that are going on, some of those trends that are going on in the street, and know how to come back and deliver some of that information in a preventative way to our students, just like knowing what type of drugs and how those drugs could come as looking as candy and looking safe. So letting our students know things like that. And also something that our SROs do is come and build relationships by just doing lunch groups with our students and just having casual conversation, because the one thing I always say is the real value that they bring is being able to build relationships with our students. And I'll just kind of end off with a quick story of talking about relationship building. One of our students a couple of years ago was in a situation at his home where the police were called in because he had a gun up to his head. It was in an active situation of wanting to commit suicide. And I truly believe that relationship that one of our regionally based SROs was able to come in and talk that child down and get that gun away from that child definitely was the difference of probably saving that child's life and somebody not losing a child. So that's what I'd like to share with everyone today.
All right, thank you, Marcus. He kind of led us into this teammate kind of concept that is another really big goal and objective of our school resource officer program. I wanted to explain it from a kind of a different lens. Robin Harris is here from Whaley Secondary School, which serves a specialized population with kids who are special education and also struggle with their behavior and responses at school. So I'd like her to just talk about how that teammate relationship with SROs and building relationships really works to her advantage at Whaley.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I am Robin Harris, principal of Whaley and the ACT program for adult community transition for 18 to 21-year-olds too with cognitive disabilities. So the SRO program has been definitely a piece that works with our students that exhibit some mental health issues throughout their school day and even on into after the school hours. So the close communication that I have with our SROs, which I share with Ron Brown at East High School, is very important when our students may run from the school and are actively running out into the traffic on purpose because they are angry. The perception of the community would be that there's somebody out there that's trying to get into traffic, what's happening, and we have staff members that are following. And so counting on our SROs to come and help get our students back into the school safely is very important. They do that with both populations, our ACT program and the Whaley program as well. So it's very important for us to have that. And what's very nice with our SROs also is if East High School is busy and they are unable to come, they will actually get in touch with, say, the Clark SRO that could come and talk with our students or work with our students and our staff when our students are exhibiting that profound behavior. So again, it's a key element in helping to keep our students safe, and they build that relationship. We have our SROs that just walk through our building regularly just to say hi and go into the classroom and see what they're doing and sit with them and talk with them and help them on any given day that they're free. And I really appreciate that because that builds that strong relationship with our SROs and our community as well.
All right, thank you. And you'll see some of the pictures in the slides. Our SROs, they do a lot of de-escalation and they also do some positive, proactive relationship building as well. Helena Batman is here from elementary, or Turnigan Elementary, and I'd like just to talk up from the elementary perspective how that takes place.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I have a great relationship with our SROs. Officer Winborg and Fraze are very awesome. I have a personal relationship where I can text them for any question or concern that I have, and they won't dismiss it. I mean, it could be about attendance or a larger behavior incident, whereas I might feel like it might take away from a call to 311. And so those relationships that we have with our SROs are very unique, and they're very great for principals and leadership in our school for those incidents. Officer Fraze and Winborg have come into my school when I've had instances of cyberbullying and attendance issues. They've come into the classrooms to teach about that, where students can ask questions about what may happen. They offer instances where they've been able to support families at home. They've also, when you see our littlest kids, having those positive relationships with police officers who could seem intimidating to them, it's very valuable. Thank you.
All right, just for the sake of time, I'm going to speed us along a little bit. One of the major functions and goals that they have also is visibility. And both Ruth Dean and Sven Gustafson are here, principals at Denali Montessori and West High School. They both have really critical, high-profile incidents happen in their building where police were able to respond almost immediately because of that SRO relationship. I wanted to close out a little bit just with the student perspective. Ellie Shaw's here. She's our student advisory board president. Student advisory board represents students from every secondary school in our district. And so I just wanted to let her have a minute to talk about the student perspective, and then we can wrap up for discussion.
Thank you. As she said, I'm Ellie Shaw. I'm the president of SAB, and I'm also the student rep for the district. Recently, we adopted a resolution submitted to us by Chugiak High School student government regarding the SROs in our schools. The resolution showed support for the SROs. You have the resolution in your email inbox, and there should be a copy in front of you, and there's also one on the screen. The students presenting the proposal spoke about how much they enjoy having SROs in their schools and how safe it makes them feel. I personally agree with that. SROs are really a key point in our schools. They, make students feel safe, and and as we saw, with the West situation, we can see that anything can happen in our schools, even if it's bigger or smaller. So having that first, backup already there, it can be really good in certain situations. It's also really special to see students create relationships with SROs that some people can be afraid of officers if they've had past interactions that weren't good or have bad, reputations from them. So it's really cool to see students build relationships with the office or the SROs. And it's I don't know, I just feel like it helps build a good community for our schools in general.
All right, thanks, Ellie. And then the last thing is, if you're curious what our top service calls are, if we could put that slide back up, these are some of the top reasons that SROs respond to our schools, both at school and in the community as well. So I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Bishop. Or President Bellamy.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know that most of us in the room, it's not, the question is not how valuable. The question is, for us today is to have a conversation. So I do appreciate you guys being real patient and holding your questions. But if we could now begin to ask questions, and I will recognize your questions. But I did feel it was important that we give an overview of the impact and the value for those who might not be familiar with, what actually happens in our schools. So with that, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'll be serving as Assembly Chair at this work session just because a number of our other leadership folks were otherwise indisposed. I would ask my colleagues to just send me a text and I'll tap President Bellamy on the shoulder. I guess I'd like to kick things off with a discussion with the administration, the school administration. We received the I already have one member already asked a question. We received the mayor's proposed budget, and since then we've had a number of work sessions and our own budget hearings. But I'm wondering the degree to which the school administration has been working with the mayor's office and the Muni administration, trying to find a way to fund this program.
Dr. Bishop.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. At this time, we have a few requests in by our communications to have a meeting to discuss, but we have not had that meeting, had an opportunity to speak with the mayor's office and the administration.
Okay. I'll just express that that's worrisome because our budget is scheduled to be passed on Tuesday. Honestly, it's a little bit shocking. So I'm hopeful that the municipal administration can work with the school district to help resolve this. President Bellamy, do you want to go through the queue of people?
I will. I have Mrs. Alatel.
Thank you, President Bellamy. I'm going to put a little bit finer point on this, and I don't know if there's anyone from the municipal administration on the line, but this cut was proposed by the administration, and subsequently we have seen Mayor Bronson put out statements that he supports SROs and keeping them in the school district. So I would just ask if there's anyone from the municipal administration, if they have found a way to restore this funding to fulfill the statement that Mayor Bronson has said that he does not want to see cuts to the SRO program, although it is his administration that originally proposed them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Alatel. I think we have, hello, how are you guys? Thank you. If you'll introduce yourselves, and because I know who you are. I know who both of you are, but introduce yourselves, please.
Larry Baker from the Mayor's Office on behalf of the administration. I would like to point out a couple of things for the record. Actually, this issue first was discussed, let me get my notes out here, on October the 1st. Chief McCoy spoke regarding this matter. Then on October 5th, the municipal attorney met with Mr. Roth, with Mr. Vacalis. Then on the 15th, Chief McCoy again spoke to this issue with the administration here at the school district. In terms of the funding of the program, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, as was pointed out earlier, the program has been in the schools for 20 years. Over that period of time, there's been different level of fundings. Sometimes it's been fully funded when the funds were available. Other times it's been a 50-50 split. So if you go back in history, you will see that in fact is what has happened when the funds were available. This year we have a particularly difficult problem in the administration because of the tax cap calculation and the way that it works. The average CPI for 5 years and the average population growth for 5 years go into the formula presentation. And as we all know in this community, that the formula, as a consequence of that, and decrease about 30,000 population decrease, the available taxing ability is decreased. So consequently, in building the budget, some very difficult decisions had to be made because the mayor committed to not reduce line item firefighters or line item police officers on the street. But the available taxes that could be collected is about $7.5 million less than it was in the prior year. So the formula, in all this consideration, there's $149,000 only below the tax cap. So some very difficult things. So this is a return to practices in the past whereby the SROs were shared with the school district and not 100% picked up by the administration. I mean, by the administrative budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Bishop, you
Sure.
had a...
Sure. I would just want to go on record and share that I did have those meetings. I thought you were mentioning the administration. I did receive a call right before it was announced by Chief McCoy. I think that might have been the first. And then Tom Roth did meet with someone from the office. And then on the 15th, I did meet with Chief McCoy again. I thought you were referring directly to the mayor, and I have not. We've had requests, but they haven't come to fruition yet.
I think you meant
Thank
that.
you, Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Let's see. Next on my list, I have Mr. Weddleton.
There we go. Looking for a yellow button. Well, I guess, appreciate, I think there's general support for SROs, and I think you made a good case, but the question is who pays? And, were we to pass a budget, which is difficult, I think Mr. Baker spelled out, money's always tight, and you guys made a good case for you too, but are SROs done and gone if we don't fund the full cost at the municipal side? So I guess that's question one. And then alternatively, how do we cut the cost? And my understanding is that because they work their normal shifts, the 10-hour shifts or whatever, that increases the cost because they're not really here your hours, but they're their hours. And if there's any way to, get them so the SROs are in sync with the school district and maybe cut the number that we have, just something. Because I think we all want them. There's no question, but it's an expensive, valuable, but expensive program. And then I think some of the things that they do, I think the normal person on the street, you make a case, thinks, well, don't you have counselors? And I know you also have security people at the schools too. So you have the SROs, but you also have security staff. So somewhere in that mix, do you need as much security staff if you have SROs? And I figure over 20 years, you maybe found that balance, but it seems like there's a lot of pieces in play here to try to cut the costs and make this work because everyone shares that goal. Thanks.
Dr. Bishop, did you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. And we have, and actually, I think during her tenure as an assembly person, Amy, I always struggle with, I have a post name, but Dombosky, had suggested and made some action to lower the numbers, but have the schedules be the same. And my understanding is that is part of the CBA with the police department. So that was an avenue that the assembly tried to move towards. And so that was one thing. It had been tried. We would appreciate discussions in that. ASD, having them on the same work schedule would be beneficial. In regard to who pays and how that happens, that really is a school board function in deciding the final budget and where that goes.
And Dr. Bishop, I would add to that the mayor is fully supportive of the SRO program as he's stated publicly. And if there is a creative way, and we've had to get creative in this community in the past over these 20 years. And so we should explore those options because I think the program is extremely valuable for our community.
So I would absolutely love, I put in a few requests to meet with them personally and just haven't been able to respond.
We'll make it happen.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Madam President, I just like to note for the record that Chair LaFrance and Member Peterson have joined us online.
Thank you. Next in the queue, I have Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam President. So I have a few things. I'll just do a couple now, and then I'll get back in the queue for more. So I guess first, just general statement based off of what Mr. Weddleton stated. I guess I would caution any assembly members from making blanket statements that everyone on the assembly supports SROs in the current configuration. I don't think you should make that assumption. So I actually have a question for the school board. Has the school board taken a position on, I guess from two perspectives, both from the budgetary perspective, has the school board taken a position on the shifting from the municipal budget to the school district budget? And then has the school board taken a position on the SRO and particularly, some of the goals that you're hoping to achieve with continuance of the SRO program? Thanks.
So I'll start on that. So relative to, we have 4 new board members. The prior board the board before that had discussions. The current board, we have had a very brief discussion on keeping the program, the value of the program, the impact if we lose it, but not being able to pay for it. That we are here today to basically ask the assembly to ensure that we get funding for SROs. Relative to now, where each individual board member is, I cannot tell you that today because we've not had that deeper discussion. We understand the administration's perspective, but we simply have not had time and opportunity to go through a public process and discussion of SROs. We periodically get information, we get testimony for SROs, we get testimony against SROs. We are in a position right now where we don't have time to have those discussions because right now, we $2.3 million shifted to us literally overnight from my perspective. We just have not. So where we are right now today is asking the mayor to fund the program. That will give us time and opportunity to have the discussions that we need to have with both among ourselves and with this community. This is a community discussion that we have not had.
I guess just to follow up on that. So, for us, per municipal charter and code, the latest that we can vote on the budget is December 10th. I'm assuming that you can't have that community conversation in time by December 10th. So then, it looks like we're being asked to sort of do a short-term fix while you guys figure out the long-term policy discussion. Would that be sort of an accurate representation?
Yes and no. Yes, because time is of the essence. And then I think the no part is, for 20 years, we've been used to a program. We've been used to a service, which is a public service. Schools don't pay for police, right? In this town, right? That's a public service. It's like with the pools. Everybody uses them. So why would we, so we're going to start, you're asking us to change the way we do business. And for us to do it the right way, we've got to have some time and resource to be able to do that. So I'm not saying we can't revisit the whole SRO program, but you really give us, it's just the circumstances does not lead to a very thorough and inclusive process to be able to do that.
Thanks. And I guess just for my part,
we can hear from other board members as well.
Yeah, just really quick comment. I apologize on my part for the circumstance that we have put the school district under. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Member Donnelly.
Director Johnston, you used the term pipeline to prisons in your presentation. How do you define the term pipeline to prisons, and what evidence do you have that such a thing has or has ever existed, does or has ever existed in ASD with or without RSOs?
Member Donnelly, did you direct the question to?
Director Johnston.
Oh, to you. Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear.
Through the president to Member Donnelly. So I don't have data in front of me today to present numbers to you. I will tell you anecdotally in my past as an assistant principal and high school principal, and now a director of secondary working with all of our secondary schools. My definition of a pipeline to prison is when officers arrive on scene to immediately arrest kids versus de-escalate them, meet mental health needs, meet behavioral challenges, or deal with the crimes that may be at hand. There's a significant difference there in the approach. That would be part of my definition. And Marcus, I'd like him to share as well on my behalf as well.
No, and part of that discussion or definition would also be talking about some of the restorative practices that we do with children, some of the relationships that we build to increase that, I would say, that relational impact that children have with the school, with the staff at the school. That's that's more of the definition of, or what we're talking about, that pipeline to prison, is just ensuring that kids have more of an opportunity to succeed in school. When we start looking at backgrounds of students, we do have statistics to say that minority students in particular are struggling more in public education, and that is in direct relationship to them having a higher representation in prison. So that's something that we're really trying to address at this level when we're talking about that prison to pipeline, scenario. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and just, Member Darling, may I, there has been research in regard to pipeline. You can go and Google it and you'll find lots of research. That's why we spent so much time discussing with the Assembly and the board that your SRO program specifically meets the needs and the outline that we designed for it. Our SROs do not come in and arrest kids with big gloves and clubs. They work with the school. So we are avoiding any kind of pipeline to prison by preempting or using preventative measures not to have that happen. But there is criticism in the greater community in the United States about pipeline to prison. So I think it was mentioned we spent so much time discussing it to share the differences of Anchorage's program.
Well, just to follow up, I recognize there's a national utilization of this terminology. I think it's inflammatory. I don't think it's accurate. And I think it's unfortunate to use it. We haven't heard a single example of anything that resembles this in the ASD. And the state of Alaska has a juvenile justice system that's designed to rehabilitate juvenile offenders and not to incarcerate them. It's a very fundamental principle that it's designed to rehabilitate anybody juvenile that commit crimes. And it's also intended to protect our students and the public from crimes.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. We do have lots of people in the queue. Member Holloman.
Yes, I'd just like to comment on Member Donnelly's question. One, there actually are documented cases where judges were getting kickbacks from students that were arrested being sent to private reform schools. It actually involved cash, and it has happened in the country, and you're correct, there's no sniff of it in Anchorage or Alaska, to my knowledge, at all. The other is that for a lot of schools, you can look at a student, look at their history, you look at their behavior, and know that they're going to be very difficult to deal with. It's a simple solution. If you can get that student arrested and put in jail, it solves your problem for a week or a month or however long possible. And again, it's a conscious choice in how we manage and work with students, despite the fact that it affects test scores and it affects the stats we have on behavior in our schools. We try very hard to keep students in school as long as they're not representing a threat to other students. Makes the job more difficult, but it doesn't marginalize populations that are at risk. And again, the SRO program could be used that way. It has consciously not been used that way. It has been designed to keep kids in the right location as long as possible by establishing those relationships. The other thing I wanted to say about funding, touching back to Assemblymember Rivera's comment, the district is funded to operate schools. And there are things that we have to do that aren't educational. We have maintenance people on staff. We have equipment to move stuff around. But it is something that's contained to ASD. The issue with SROs always has been that in addition to the work they do in schools, which is police work, they also spend a lot of time out in the community, and they're doing other things at other times based on the needs out of dispatch from APD. So they're not ASD employees, and they're not necessarily working ASD if other more serious things are happening in the community. But the work they do within our building definitely is long-term, great police work for the community. We feel like the taxes from the community that go to the municipality for those general services are the right thing. The state calculates our basic need to provide instruction, provide the support staff we need, maintain our buildings and such. It doesn't include money for that kind of level of security. The assumption is that is there. So when it came up before, I was active in advocating to the Assembly that the cost be reabsorbed by the municipal budget. And it was, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago. It just seems to be the proper place based on the variety of work that SROs do. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Holloman. Next, we have Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you so much, President Bellamy. I think I want to agree with those who believe that there's great value to the SRO program. I know with my tenure on the Anchorage School Board, I had multiple opportunities to interact with the SROs in several different schools, and even just right there occasionally in the boardroom. So I absolutely believe that it is something that's not only vital to the schools, but it is to the community at large in the way that I know there were some cases where that it was through the schools and the students in the schools that the police department was able to investigate and apprehend drug dealers. And I'm sure that's something that's still relatively common. So they do serve a wide purpose, even though they are absolutely assigned to the schools. But I will also say that during my time on the school board, we saw multiple different arrangements, financial arrangements, if you will, as to who was going to pay for the program. So I really appreciate the fact that Mr. Baker came in and explained that even though we have this 20-year history, the financing of the program has been back and forth. And a lot of it has just been based on whether or not whichever entity had the ability, I think, at the time to really fund the program. So I think we have to still consider that there's still that ongoing challenge, if you will, of figuring out how to fund it. So I also wanted to say that there was the comment that timing is of the essence. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about timing. Obviously, the Anchorage municipality is up against a very near deadline in terms of getting the 2022 budget approved. However, the Anchorage School District is not. If I'm not mistaken, you all are probably just now really starting your budget process. You'll really start to dig into things in January and make those decisions to approve or disapprove whatever component of the budget that you will. And then, of course, it comes before the Assembly then in March. So it seems to me that the people that have the time right now to kind of wrestle with this is probably going to be the Anchorage School Board. So I would suggest that we kind of allow the municipality to kind of move forward in the way that it is, and then give that time to the Anchorage School Board and the school district to wrestle with their funding as well. And then one of the advantages that the municipality has, that the Assembly will have, is actually doing first quarter budget revisions. And that really becomes the time when we have a better picture then of what's going on with ASD's budget. And then we certainly have a better picture of what's happening with municipal funds. So I would just say that, you know, it's not that I want to delay anything, but I do want to say that I think there is some time available by where we're not really going to be shutting down a program specifically because of the way that the Anchorage School District's budget works from a July 1st to a June 30th time frame, that I think there is some time in there to really wrestle with this question. But I have some questions that I would hope that the district would be able to answer, and it's kind of a two-part one. I was told by one of the school board members that the state actually held the Anchorage School District, well, all districts, harmless, I guess, this last year in funding, even when there was a reduction in students. So it didn't impact the BSA in a way that it would typically do. So my understanding is that the school district did not lose funding, even though it definitely lost students that would account for that BSA multiplier. So you can clarify that for me if that's true or not. And then the other one is there's a rumor that there's federal funding coming into the state to the tune of about $100 million for education. And I would just like to know what you all know about potentially what additional funding you might be getting from other outside sources, just if there's any truth to that and what additional federal fundings or state funding that you might be anticipating. Thank you, Madam President.
Sure. Thank you for the questions.
Sure. I can just briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Jim, our CFO, to get the details. It is true there is a hold harmless clause. It is not, at this time, it's decremented moving into next year to about 25% of allowable. So we can receive about 25% of what would have been received for the students, the 1,000 students we lost. Additionally, the funds, yes, the American Relief Program, Anchorage, due to its number of title students, which is in regard to poverty, received $111 million that can be spent through 2024. And the board is deliberating on that with their budget at the same time. Anything else, Jim?
I can just clarify the first year of COVID, when Hold Harmless kicked in, we were able to retain 75% of the difference on the number of students who didn't return to Anchorage at the start of school. This current school year, it's only 50%, and next year is 25%. So the Hold Harmless was never designed to cover all expenses, but to allow you to stair-step the level of reductions you have to make.
Thank you. Next, we have Member Higgins. He just stepped out. Well, we'll come back to Member Higgins. Let's see. Forrest, I'm sorry.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dunbar.
Madam President, I think Felix actually might be before me in the queue.
He's after you.
Oh, okay.
It's just not.
My fault. So I'll just note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Constant and online. And for Superintendent Bishop, I understand that you might have been meeting, and for the administration, meeting with the police chief and the municipal attorney. But, you know, as we've been told during this budget process over and over, the policy calls on the budget are being made by the mayor's office and then expressed to the assembly through the municipal manager and through OMB, who was Mr. Reskowitz and now is, someone help me. Bonza. Yes, I apologize to Ms. Bonza. So that is really the people I really hope that over the next 4 days, there is that kind of communication with, because, you know, the mayor gave us a budget that cut this funding, and then he stated online, quote, "Any talk of removing this valuable program is not from me. I will not be cutting this program. I will absolutely work hard to find the money to fund the SROs." That is directly in contradiction to the budget he sent to the assembly. But we have several days where you can develop a substitute version of the budget. And so that's what I think we're at the assembly hoping, that the mayor's office is able to work with you to give us that substitute version. And so I guess I would ask the folks from the mayor's office if that will happen and what that might look like. And obviously we'd like to receive that information about where that money is coming from as soon as possible before Tuesday night.
Thank you. Let's go back to Member Higgins. Oh,
I'm sorry, Madam President.
Mm-hmm.
Could someone from the mayor's office please comment on that?
I see. Sorry.
In terms, Mr. Dunbar, of the statement, the program, the mayor did not remove the program. He only 50% of the funding, not the entire program as was stated. It was 75. It was not the entire program. So just to keep the record absolutely certain. And yes, we'll enter discussions over the next couple of days and explore opportunities. But also, as you know, this afternoon we're awaiting the budget amendments from the assembly members to see what those look like. So that'll help fill out the picture as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Thank you, Madam President.
All right. Member Higgins, you had a comment?
Yes.
Question?
Thank you, Madam President. The question that came up from the Assembly has to do with the budget that the school district will approve and where we're at. And the board has not made a decision in regards to that. Our process is not there. But as an individual board member, we can respond to those questions, and I intend to do that. We have a real crisis in the Anchorage School District. Just November 2017, we stopped getting the money from the state, additional increases, and that limits how much the municipality also contributes to us. So we've had a flat from that standpoint of what the maximum amount allowed is based on that. So just to put it in perspective, while there's been increases in property taxes, it's not looking at the school district as being a source behind that. And I think that's an important issue. We've got some real crisis issues associated with the pandemic. We've talked about that, the finances associated. We are going to have an extremely difficult time staffing. Of course, there's millions of people that have quit working in the country, but we've got them in education as well. Staffing is a real serious problem for us in operations. We've got additional expenses associated with the pandemic in regards to maintaining a safe environment for all the individuals in the schools. Within that, we talked about the issue of heading towards the fiscal cliff. We've got the funding, additional funding in the state, but it's down to 25% for the makeup, so it's going down. It's going to be eliminated. So we've got all those issues involved. No inflationary adjustments in regards to it. Looking at 6% adjustment now is just reported from the cost of living, and the inflationary factors are looking at going up. So we've got impasses with 2 union contracts trying to keep staff here within that. Our classroom sizes compared to lower 48, 36, I think it's 36 states have maximum effective classroom sizes. Ours are larger. Our academic results are really suffering right now. We've got to deal with those issues. So yes, can we divert resources? Yes, we can increase classroom sizes. Is it good for kids? No. We've got to deal with a lot of problems in the school district, and they're all resource related. So the idea that we've been flat since 2017, that we need to contribute back to fund police positions that are working within the schools is a real problem for me. I've got to deal with what's best for the kids, and it's best for the kids to reduce funding, limit it what we are right now, given where we're headed. When all these additional funds to help us right now are going, we're going to take a big fall. We're going to have to make some really bad decisions that we're being forced into that's going to impact the effectiveness of education for these kids. That's what we're really talking about. We need to get focused on the kids and not just what part of funds, because we have limited resources and it's going to get worse. And we know that. Everybody does. Unless the state somehow decides to start contributing the fair amount of money. We've done a study in regards to classroom sizes. Well, $140 million adjustment there or more just to better get the classroom sizes down. We don't have it. We don't have resources in that category. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we haven't been increasing the cost from the municipality since 2017. We've got serious challenges right now that we're facing. It's going to get worse. And asking us to try to cut back on our funding to fund police officers in this crisis kind of situation where you can't contribute anymore anyway to the school district is really tough for me, because you're asking us to make tough decisions in regards to the outcome for these kids, and our academic results need to go up. They need to improve. And it takes resources for that. And if we're going to help the next generation, we're going to help these kids. I just want to urge against the idea of cutting back funding for public education when we're underfunded. And that's where we're at right now in order to do it. And when the inflationary factor comes up, I looked at it over 30 years with the growth in like, most of it all went to health insurance because that's what's going off the chart. And that still continues to be a large issue. You want to compare it to 2011 to now and the inflationary factor. And I'll just add one more thing. We're looking at inflationary factors. We'll fund it at one level, but we've got Matsu, you got Kenai, higher, lower cost of living, they're receiving more. So we've got an equity issue as well, but our cost of living and our expenses, you're putting us in a real difficult spot by asking us to divert funds that we desperately need to help kids because they need it. But the SRO program, I think we're in total agreement, is a great program. It's important. How important is it? Are we going to divert money from kids in other programs? I don't know. But I do know you're asking us to make a difficult choice that is not good for kids.
Thank you, Member Higgins. In the interest of time, we are down to our last 9 minutes. We have 4 people still wanting to speak. So let's go. We're going back to Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief. So a few things. One, if there are any student surveys regarding SROs, that would be great if we could send that to the Assembly just out of curiosity. 2, regarding some of the discussion we had earlier in the meeting regarding the school to prison pipeline. For me, while I appreciate that the school districts put this as one of the, how is it phrased? One of the approaches here, prevent the pipeline to prison. For me, there are a lot of other factors that contribute to the school to prison pipeline. And so, that isn't, for me, a legitimate argument in relation to the SROs. I think there are probably other stronger arguments. And particularly when it comes to some of the discipline practices, I think the school board has explored in the past, particularly I know school board member Star Marcette was one of her priorities of looking at the discipline practice and how that impacted BIPOC students. And then last, just relating to the primary discussion we're having today, and just want to agree with Member Dunbar that, anything that the administration can do in relation to an S version of the budget to make sure that we're not shifting this cost over to the school district, I think would be preferable. Because I do want to give the school district the ample time it needs to do its job. And I don't think us approving a budget that shifts this $2 million over to them will give them enough time to actually explore their opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weddington. And we are down to our last 6 minutes. Do we want to extend?
I'd move to extend 15 minutes.
Is there a second to extend 15 minutes?
Second.
Is there any opposition to extending for 15 minutes? Seeing none, you may continue.
Thanks. So, Ms. Kennedy it asked about the $110 million. We've been hearing that the school district will get some kind of grant. And is that a real thing? And what are the restrictions on it? I mean, there's suggestion from the administration that at least $1 million could go towards early childhood education because we funded $2 million last year. And maybe tell us something about that grant.
Dr. Bishop.
Sure. I'd be happy to. It is the third installment. A lot of times we call it SR3 due to the response. There are 6 different buckets for which the money can be spent. The theory behind it is to make up for lost learning over time. But Jim Anderson can speak to the specific strings on that grant. It is perfunctory. I mean, it's not like meaning it. You are receiving it based on the number of title students. It's not something we apply for. It's not competitive. This is what I'm saying.
Sure, I'll go quick. The intent behind the funds is to fully reopen schools and help students recover from learning loss caused by the pandemic. There are lots of rules on appropriate uses, on how you can use federal money. And as we work with the school board over the next couple months or several months, We'll continue to define the priorities and how those funds are going to be spent. I'll point out that we did get about $50 million from CIRSA, which was ESSER 2 last year, and we applied all of that funding, 30 million of it, to retain staff this year because we had a budget deficit in the general fund. And it wouldn't be surprising to see ESSER 3 funds used over the next couple of years also to retain staff and limit the growth in class size throughout the district. But I won't get ahead of the board. We've got many, many meetings and discussions over the next several months to finalize that.
Thank you, Lisa. Did that cover your question?
I guess specifically because we'd heard from the administration that $1 million could come out of that to fund early childhood education. So our cut of $1 million could be covered by those funds. Is that something that could happen?
I mean, it's possible. The board has to discuss how they are prioritizing those funds.
Okay, but it's within the rules.
It is.
Of
That would be
okay.
within the rules.
Okay, thank you.
Just to bring it up, Madam President,
Yes, sure.
the pools would not.
The pools?
The pools would not.
Yes. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to be able to stay for the extension, but I did want to share that I know there are a couple of assembly members that have a budget amendment to restore the early childhood education funding within the alcohol tax. And given the role that the SRO program is currently playing within ASD, I don't necessarily agree with it in its current iteration, but I think it's really important that we have the conversation that if it were to end, how to off-ramp it and on-ramp other services or any changes in a really thoughtful manner. So I appreciated Ms. Kennedy's comments about first quarter budget revisions, but I get the sense that that off-ramp or any changes would probably be something we would need to think through for quite some time, probably, and take up in the 2023 budget cycle instead of something quickly. So I am, I guess, with Mr. Rivera and Mr. Dunbar, hoping to see the administration bring forward the funding to close this gap so that we can continue on and then have that thoughtful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Member Lessons.
Thank you very much. I think that the conversation about early childhood is really important and compelling. And I'm reminded of an excellent meeting I had with Dr. Bishop and our and President Bellamy and Chelsea Morrow, who's head of preschool. And I'm looking at my notes, and I'm reminded that the alcohol tax was supposed to fund 6 additional general ed classrooms this year, 2 more next year. That's up to 160 children, primarily at our Title I schools. And the reason it's so important is that the cost of preschool is exorbitant. There are some families for whom the cost of preschool is accessible. There are many more families, working class families, lower middle class families, for whom preschool is unattainable. When we are talking about getting our kids ready to learn, we have got to recall that kindergarten readiness. I've spoken about this before, the ability to have fine motor control with scissors, to know early pre-literacy skills, to be able to sit in a circle and understand what a classroom environment is. This is a program that's going to impact 160 kids next year if it's fully funded. Are you guys willing to cut that number in half?
Thank you, Member Lessons. Member Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam President. As often happens at our meetings for the Assembly members, I've ceded inadvertently a portion of my time to Member Higgins, unfortunately, so I'll be brief as well. But I did want to echo the commitment or the idea that we should address this and the municipality should address it in its 2023 budget. I think that allows sufficient time. This board, a significant portion of it is new, and we are grappling with some of the same issues that Assemblywoman Kennedy was grappling with during her time on the board. We're laser focused on reading and math scores, on addressing independent living skills and college and career readiness. those are the things that I think mean a lot to our community, and some of the communication we've received from the public is that's where our focus needs to be. I also appreciate the mayor's commitment that he made on social media to find the funding for this. And so I look forward to having conversations if the mayor's office so chooses and being a partner in that process. I don't think that that's happened yet, but that's certainly a possibility from my perspective. Lastly, I did want to indicate that I think there is a larger conversation to have as Assembly members Rivera and others have stated as to, are there ways to improve the program and better serve our students? That should always be a focus. And so I think there are a number of conversations to be had. Unfortunately, 4 days isn't time to have many. And so we appreciate the time and listening. And I think I do echo what President Bellamy said initially to start the meeting, that we're asking the municipality to continue funding this program while we grapple longer term with what any changes might look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jacobs. Next, Member Donnelly.
Yeah, I strongly support the SRO program. I think an important point has not been raised yet is that the SRO's duties are not exclusively not exclusively school related. The SROs respond to emergencies and as needed outside of schools, and the ASD does not control that utilization. We have dedicated SRO at only one of our middle schools and none of our elementary schools. The board has passed a resolution several years ago asking the municipality to expand the coverage into more of our middle schools for safety of those students' reasons, because of the occurrence of external threats to our high school. In middle schools, it'd be a significant increase in, I think, the safety of the students there. And I remain concerned about that and appreciate the program very much, and municipalities' continue support of it.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. Ms. Kennedy, did you have another question?
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, my question was answered when Mr. Weddleton asked his question. So I guess I'll just comment. I would agree with your frustration levels in regard to state funding. We get that. We had to charge the taxpayers an additional $39 million last year for the school bond debt reimbursement that was not funded. So believe me, we feel that pain as well. And then I guess I would just say that, both bodies have to decide what to fund. I understand that there are tough decisions that have to be made, but we're in that place as well. And believe me, we have just as many people lining up asking for more funding or additional funding or not to reduce funding, and that's what we're going to wrestle with a little bit today and definitely on Tuesday night. So both of us are in those positions of having those tough choices to make. But as they say, that's why we get the big bucks, right? So anyway, I appreciate so much the conversation, and I think this will be ongoing for a little while. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. So that brings us to near the close of this particular conversation. It's not over. I do want to thank Mr. Baker and Ms. Graham for joining us today, along with other individuals from the mayor's office. I want to thank our board and, of course, our staff for bringing their realities and perspectives to the table. And of course, the Assembly. I know you guys have many, many meetings, and yet you found time to have this conversation with us, and I appreciate that. So we look forward to hearing from the mayor's office and over the next hour. No, I'm joking. Next couple of days. And of course, board members, thank you. As we will get through this, our kids deserve it, and they depend on us to do the right thing. With that, I will allow any final comments. We have 10 minutes. Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate the discussions. And like Mr. Baker, I think in regard to the tax cap, and the minimal and maximum allowable under the state law, I think that we can find a way to move through this situation. I look forward to meeting with the mayor and his team to share ideas. I'm not an expert on their budget, but understanding the school district and the ADM, I'm confident we can come to a good deal.
Thank you. Let's just go around. Dr. Johnson, final comment. Like 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, I think that Dr. Bishop stated it well. I'll defer my time.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw, thank you for being here.
Yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's super cool. So thank you.
Great. And now you have met some assembly people. When she came in, she says, I've never met an assembly person in all my life. And I said, sit next to me. As we continue to go around, there are some handouts on your table. One, of course, is the Student Advisory Board resolution, as well as a document from the Anchorage Education Association. Member Wilson, final comments.
Final comments. I appreciate the assembly members and folks from the mayor's office attending, as well as our wonderful staff at the Anchorage School District that works with these with our students every day. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. And I am also a huge supporter of the SROs because I really, truly believe that they have the opportunity to build those relationships with our students and their families to project a more positive outcome for each of our kids. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, good to see you.
And President, as always, it's good to see you again. To the Superintendent Bishop, we'll be in touch very quickly. We have an assembly meeting, I believe, at 1 o'clock today, as we discussed budget issues. But we'll certainly be in touch and look for both bodies, both halves of our community have significant budget challenges ahead of them. I know I'm familiar with your budget. As you know, I have some history here as well. And it's a real challenge because our kids need all the help they can get in this community. And it's not like it was 20 years ago. It's not like it was 30 years ago. Things have changed. And we have to fight those battles together and collectively as one, as the community. And we'll certainly do everything within our power to try to help advance the kids in this community and work together, because I think that's really the key.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. Thank you. Sammy, good to see you. Ms. Graham, sorry.
That's all right. I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Baker said. The mayor fully supports the SRO program. I know when I was a principal in both public and private, I couldn't have done without my SRO. So he was there at West High with Principal Gustafson after the incident I think it was last week, maybe early this week. So we look forward to the conversations.
Thank you. Welcome. Member Lessons.
Yeah, quickly, I will echo Member Wilson and say thank you to our staff for sharing your wisdom and your experiences and your time today. Thank you for your leadership at our schools. And I also wanted to just underscore Mr. Anderson's point. These federal funds are intended to reopen our schools. They are intended to help our children recover. Anything else, being asked to do anything else with them is a distraction and a disservice.
Thank you. Member Higgins, and you have
I have 7 minutes. I know. Just a thank you to the Assembly and the Mayor's Office for being here, and a special thanks for all the staff that have been here that shared the information that you did. It was very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jacobs.
Thank you. I'll be brief as well. I appreciate everyone who took time out to attend today. Thank you. Certainly appreciate our staff. I admire the hard work you're doing, and I'm glad that we got a chance to share a little bit about that today. And I'm looking forward to being a part of more conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Donnelly.
I just want to say thank you to the municipality for strong support of Anchorage schools. We're one of the few communities that puts the maximum allowable under state law into our schools locally. I think we can be really proud as a community of that. And the SRO program is an example of where the community has really stepped up and helped the school district out by maximizing the state formula dollars that are allowed legally to go to a school district locally. And that's really helped out the Anchorage schools. So thank you for your continuing support.
Thank you, Member Dunley. Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, thanks. It's always an education at these meetings. Thanks.
Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no comment.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I appreciate the privilege of your time. Have a wonderful day.
Madam President.
Oh,
this is Miss Quinn Davidson. Hi, this is Austin.
Oh, hi. Yes.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I just wanted to thank all of you for hosting this meeting and just ask for the administration to really clarify what their position is. We're both hearing that they support this program and have seen that they cut 75% of it. So one of those messages is not like the other. And I guess the community and the assembly probably needs a little clarification. We're really committed to restoring the funding for early education. We know that there's an investment of $1 leads to a payback of $7 later with early education investment. So I'm very committed to that. I know many of my colleagues are, and we'll work with you to try to get all of this fixed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Quinn Davison. Mr. Constant. Final comments? Ms. Kennedy, how about you?
I'm going to be able to talk. I'm just streaming, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for your participation. I think the Assembly is still strongly in support of the school district's priorities, and I look forward to seeing what the administration brings forward in their S version to clarify the mayor's position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kennedy, final comment? Let's move to Ms. LaFrance. Hi. You're muted.
Crumbs. Thanks. Rookie mistake. Thanks for your time today and for putting together this work session. I apologize I couldn't be there in person, but appreciate the information and also look forward to an S version of the budget that fully funds the SRO program. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And unless there are any other comments, we are adjourned. Thank you. Our business today is done. Well, no.